The Glendale Housing Authority will have a single item. This is an overview of the Section 8 waiting list. That'll just be a note and file report. There will be a joint meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Redevelopment Agency to address a single item, that being the Adult Recreation Center project, basically dealing with funding options and considerations for that. On the City Council meeting that night, September 2nd at 6 o'clock, there are a number of items. The first one will be the City Manager's Office will be presenting a report on the Arts and Culture Commission, actually broadened from the Arts and Culture Commission, the role of arts in the future of Glendale. Secondly, the Director of Administrative Services and Finance will be presenting a report on the capital improvement program for Fire Station 26 and the Casa Verdugo Branch Library. Director of Planning will be submitting a report and a urgency ordinance for introduction regarding permit exceptions for temporary frame story poles. And then lastly, the Director of Planning will be discussing a public hearing for a conditional use permit case located at 6410 San Fernando Road, more commonly known as the Ambrosia Restaurant.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next item, please.
At 3B is a proclamation designating October and November 2008 as One Book, One Glendale citywide reading program.
Very good. If I may, Councilmember Najarian, make that presentation, and if we could please have the representatives, Mary Alice Wolin here, and who else do we have with you?
Pat Sider and Teresa Robinette, and we're all from the Glendale Public Library.
Thank you so much for coming. Councilmember Najarian?
Mr. Mayor. And this is your proclamation. Whereas the Glendale Public Library will celebrate its second annual One Book, One Glendale program for adults and children during October and November 2008, and whereas this year's books are Enrique's Journey by Sonia Nazario and Any Small Goodness by Tony Johnston, and whereas the One Book, One Glendale program highlights the experiences of Hispanic immigrants in America, and whereas the Glendale Public Library, in partnership with Glendale Community College and the Friends of the Glendale Public Library, will bring the authors and other speakers to the library, Glendale Community College, and Hoover High School. Now, therefore, John Drayman, Mayor of the City of Glendale, hereby proclaims One Book, One Glendale as a shared reading experience and encourages the Glendale community to join family and friends to discuss Enrique's Journey by Sonia Nazario and Any Small Goodness by Tony Johnston.
Congratulations.
You know, the whole idea of One Book, One Glendale, Mr. Mayor and City Council members, is to promote reading in Glendale and to have a unifying experience of inviting everyone to read the same book at the same time, discuss it together, attend programs about the book, and meet the author. And we have a very exciting two books that we've chosen. We have an adult teen component and a children's component. And to talk about Enrique's Journey is Pat Sider.
Thank you. This year we have selected Enrique's Journey by Sonia Nazario as our adult one-book choice. The book began as a series of Pulitzer Prize-winning articles for the Los Angeles Times in 2002, and Ms. Nazario investigated the story of Central American parents working illegally in the U.S. whose children attempt to rejoin them. Enrique's Journey is the true story of a young Honduran boy's perilous journey through Mexico, mostly atop trains, and his dangerous illegal border crossing to find his mother in the U.S. When he arrives, he discovers that reuniting is not as simple as it seems. For her research, Ms. Nazario risked her own safety to retrace Enrique's dangerous route. And one of the reasons we chose this book is because it offers so much to talk about. I think Mary Alice has a couple of other remarks.
Thank you.
You know, everybody has their book in hand, Enrique's Journey, and so I encourage everyone to start reading. Start reading in September, because in October, we have book groups that'll be meeting all over Glendale, in libraries, on the patio at Whole Foods, at Barnes & Noble in the Americana. We will be having programs that relate to Enrique's journey, an arts program on Hispanic arts at Brand Library. I don't know if you know who Gustavo Arellano is. He writes the Ask a Mexican column, a very thought-provoking writer. He'll be at the library. And all of these activities at the library and at Glendale Community College, Hoover High, Daly High will culminate in November, on November the 5th, an easy date to remember because it is the day after the election. And so whether you're happy about the election or sad about the election, we hope you'll come and meet the author, Sonia Nazario, at the Central Library. And the next day she'll be at GCC and at Hoover High. And we have an equally exciting children's book for one book.
Hello. Our children's book this year is Any Small Goodness. It was written by a local author. She lives in San Marino, and it takes place here in Los Angeles. It's the story of Arturo and his family. They're recent immigrants from Mexico and what they do to become part of their new adopted culture. The children's component is an unusual thing. Most One City, One Books, we're very fortunate to have a library that believes in reading for children as much as they do for adults. And it's not just a one-time event. The author will be here on the 15th of November. We're also having, the book group is going to be discussing the book, and this is the parent-child book group in October. And then on the 8th of November, we are going to have a Celebrate Mexican Cultural Day. So it's going to be several activities and a lot of fun. We're handing out some class sets of books to the Glendale schools, limited numbers, but a few classes will get sets. And we hope all the kids in Glendale will read the book, and we hope you read it as well. It's a lovely story that deals with issues that if there isn't good in your life, you need to make it, and it's not always the big things that are the important things. It's the small things, and hence the title, Any Small Goodness.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kasakian, could we hear 3C, please?
3C is the AAEE Award presentation by Glendale Water and Power.
And I'd like to ask if Councilmember Yusefian would be willing to up and actually receive that award on behalf of the city.
Is it going to blow up?
No, but it looks big and heavy to me.
Heavy, no,
Why don't you hold that up so the camera can see it?
Power spares.
By the podium.
There we go.
There you go. And please come tell us who you are, tell the public who you are, and a little about this.
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name is Dan Askenizer. I'm the manager of the Water Quality Group in Glendale Water. It's my pleasure to be here on behalf of a number of staff in Glendale Water to talk about our study and the awards that it's received. I'll turn it over in just a second to Dr. Michael McGuire, who is our partner in this study, but I want to give you just a little bit of background of what the study involved and the issues involved. One of the fundamental things that we do to protect public health is maintaining a disinfectant residual throughout the distribution system, throughout the entire city of Glendale. State and federal regulations mandate that we have residual throughout the system. So we go out, our staff, every week, we take samples, we test the water, and based on those results, we do an evaluation. We may add chlorine periodically. So a couple years ago, we undertook a couple of serious activities to try and improve our program. One of them were these solar-powered mixers, the Solar Bees. So now we have continuous mixing inside of all of our storage facilities, our reservoirs, and that helps us tremendously. At the same time we started installing these mixers, we undertook this study. Basically, it's a study to look at a new technology, chlorite, as a means of enhancing the disinfectant life throughout our system. It was a pretty complicated study, and it involved a lot of facets. We had to work closely with the California Department of Public Health to get them involved in the study. We had a lot of challenges throughout the study, and that required a lot of close coordination between water quality folks, operation folks, just to make things work like we wanted to. So I'd like to, if I may, acknowledge a few of the folks, the staff who were involved in the study. For our operations, we had Bill Vinther, Dave Massey, Mike Romanino, Sal Sanchez, and a number of their operators, system mechanics, who helped tremendously in making this a successful study. For the Water Quality Group, Ray Notario, Scott Daly, Martin Manicharian, Tim Amison, Ruben Gomez, and Andre Ivazjan contributed because there's tremendously. Every day we had to go out, we were collecting samples, running tests, and evaluating the study. As I mentioned, our partner in the study was Dr. Mike McGuire and the consulting firm Malcolm Perney. Staff was Ying Wu and Dr. Danny Chin and Dr. Nicole Blute. And it was an honor for me to work with Dr. McGuire. I've known him for years and have been involved with him over the years in various projects. And we had some very interesting results, and Dr. McGuire will talk to you about some of the awards that our project received. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. McGuire.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, it's really an honor to be here and to be part of this presentation because this is truly an amazing award. It's given by the American Academy of Environmental Engineers, and it is presented for excellence in environmental engineering. This is the grand prize for research. Only one of these awards is given every year for all of the environmental engineering awards that have been submitted for consideration. Some of the criteria include holistic environmental perspective, innovation, proven performance, and customer satisfaction, and not the least of which, economic efficiency. I can only echo what Dan has said about the hard work that was done by Glendale Water staff in making this work. It truly was a partnership between Glendale and Malcolm Perney and also the California Department of Public Health. We submitted this for consideration by AAEE, and were awarded the grand prize in research, and it's something for Glendale to really be proud of, and I'm very happy to be here as part of this presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. McGuire, and thank you on behalf of the city, and that is an absolutely gorgeous presentation. Mr. Yusefian is holding there. Thank you so much. Mr. Kasakian, something that is not on the agenda but should have been is...
Presentation?
Oh, I'm sorry.
May I make
Yes.
a comment if you don't mind?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say that there are times that we don't appreciate the work that gets done in the city of Glendale. This is a grand prize, as I was reading some of the stuff. This is not one of those things that's handed out. It's almost like the Academy Awards for this type of work. I remember a few years back, the planning department got the Compass Award, which was a very large, for first time in the history of SCAG, they gave the Compass Award. I would say this is almost equivalent to that. So, Mr. Zern, when do you get yours? Works department. Yeah, well, let's. Yeah, was it as good as this?
Oh yeah, but it was asphalt. It was made out of asphalt.
I just want to say thank you. You guys did a fantastic job. These are not easy to come by, as I did some research. This is a very competitive field, very difficult. A lot of people with a lot of good ideas come in, and to actually stand up head and shoulder above everybody else, that is a huge achievement. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Yusefian. Mr. Kasakian, there's an item that should be on here that is not. Actually, there are two, but one of which is a presentation from GMA related to Glendale Relay for Life. And looks like we have a variety of presenters, so I'll let them introduce themselves. And I would like to know if Councilmember Quintero would mind receiving this presentation. I think you'll know the precipitous moment. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, John O'Bagdinian, I'm president of the Glendale Management Association. With me are the Board of Directors, Jay Kreitz, Todd Stokes, Mike Whitaker, Dave Ahern, who's not on the board, used to be on the board, but he is here for the check. On behalf of the Glendale Management Association, we would like to make a donation to the American Cancer Society for the Relay for Life event. This is a very important event that the Glendale Management Association over the last 4 years since its inception has participated. Our managers have contributed hundreds of hours of volunteer time in terms of organization of the Relay for Life event. and also doing fundraising at many of their other fundraising events that have taken place. The Management Association over the last 4 years has contributed $10,000 to the American Cancer Society. Given the higher goal of this year's that they want to raise additional funds, we have doubled our donation to the Relay for Life American Cancer Society this year. We are here to present to the city, to American Cancer Society, a check in the amount of $5,000. This is not a blow-up of the check, but the real check will be presented to the American Cancer Society. So we're very pleased to be part of the committees and the organization, and we are always going to be participating in this great event that is important to the community, City of Glendale. I'd like to present this check.
John, and to the board, and I will present the check to the person that...
That would be me. I'm the honorary chair.
Oh.
So don't go far with that $5,000, Mr. Quintero.
I'll let you give it to the honorary chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Thank you, GMA. And Mr. Aburn, would you please remind everyone about when the Relay for Life is?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, Relay for Life is September 27th and 28th at Shoal Canyon Ball Fields, Upper Shoal. And this will be our 5th anniversary of Relay in Glendale. So we're looking forward to a great turnout and invite everyone to come and participate.
Very good. Thank you so much, and thank you, GMA. That is a very generous donation. Thank you. It will go to a great cause. There is one more presentation, and again, it is not on the agenda here. Could I ask Stephen Coleman to please come forward? Well, you can come on up if you want, Mr. Takis. Stephen Coleman is the one on the right to my colleagues up here who can't tell. The one on the left is Vicky. So,
Vicky.
We have a mayor's commendation that I'd like to present to you, Stephen. But before I do, I just want to explain that Mr. Coleman is a photojournalist. He lives in Glendale, works for ABC, and any of you that have had the opportunity to see the collage prints and the single prints that are on the wall in the mayor's office, Mr. Coleman is the photographer who took those photos.
Never invited me.
Never invited you. He has captured some 750 different sites, iconic and historic landmarks in the city of Glendale, and has made many of them available for us to look at on disc and so on. So those photographs will remain with the city, and if the mayor that succeeds me is not planning to keep them up, they will still find a home in our city. Let me present this commendation to you. And let me read it first. It says, Mayor's commendation presented to Stephen Coleman with deepest gratitude for documenting over 750 iconic and historic landmarks in Glendale. I am pleased that your beautiful and unique photographs will adorn the walls of the mayor's office for the future enjoyment of all who visit our city. I thank you, and that is to you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Draymond, and thank you, everybody. With me tonight is Vince Takis and Vicki McConnell. And I realized shortly after the 7 pieces, the Glendale Jewel collection was put in the mayor's office, that only those that go into his office could see it. So I contacted Vicki at Fast Frame of Glendale and asked her if she wanted to collaborate and frame a second set, a smaller set, and have it in her gallery. And that's what we decided to do. So everybody could go to her store and at least see the 7 pieces. I thank you very much.
Well, before you sneak away, I think we should explain how this came about. Mr. Coleman walked up to me in one day and explained to me that he has the collection, asked to do the collection in the gallery at City Hall in downtown Los Angeles, that he was invited to do so by Mayor Villaraigosa, and said, gee, how'd you like me to do the same kind of thing at the mayor's office at City Hall? And it's a far cry between the two locations, but in any case, the work is beautiful, and I understand you were honored last Thursday by another local representative, County Supervisor Michael Antonovich. You might want to tell them a little bit about that as well.
Actually, he spilled some of the beans that night that we were trying to not talk too much about, but it's out there. I do have a 23-piece exhibit in the mayor's hallway in Los Angeles City Hall. I approached Don Kanabe and Mike Antonovich, LA County supervisors, on a lark one day. I said, hey, you don't have anything on your walls at all. The truth about their building was probably built in the 40s or 50s, and they have marble walls. And they have not had anything on their walls because it's so difficult to figure out a way to do it. And I spoke with Supervisor Kanabe and suggested a cable hanging system, and he liked it. He went over and looked at City Hall and liked it, and we've been working on it for 4 months. And he's got some creative graphics people that have drawn it up, and we've selected the images, and hopefully in the next 2 or 3 months, depending on how long it takes to solve that marble problem, I'll be hanging a 22-piece exhibit there featuring LA County sites such as Mount Wilson in the snow and Santa Monica and Cabrillo Beach and
just don't forget that Glendale is part of LA County.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Mr. Antonovich came the other night at a reception that we had at Fast Frame, and he presented a proclamation, and he spilled the beans.
Well, good. He's entitled to. So.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much, and congratulations.
Well,
thank you for helping to improve the look of our offices.
I think the public may like to know where Fast Frame is so that they can go take a look at
Can we have Vicki come up and speak?
Problem telling you this, but it is at 112 North Grand Boulevard, just north of Broadway. And there's parking behind us on Maryland.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we on the fourth Tuesday of every month, we collect all of our monthly presentations, and we do them on that particular night. So that is what you saw here tonight, and I thank you one and all for attending and participating. Mr. City Clerk, can we have the next item, please?
At D is appointment of Mr. Glenn and Yamada to the Audit Committee. Nomination was made by Councilmember Weaver.
Mr. Mayor, it's interesting you can know somebody for many years and not know all the background they have. I knew that Glenn Yamada was involved in the Glendale Medical Group for many, many years as the CEO, and I wonder why he's applying for the Audit Committee. Turns out he has his bachelor's degree in accounting. He's a certified public accountant. He's taken engineering and management courses, and he was the audit supervisor for Price Waterhouse and Company for many years. So we get a great diversity of a gentleman that's lived in this town for over 30 years. So I'd like to nominate him for the Audit Committee.
Second.
Comments, I'll turn on my microphone. How's that? If there are no further comments, Mr. Kasakian, let us call the roll.
Councilmembers Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Draymond?
Yes. Next item, please.
appointment at E is the appointment of Mr. Robert J. Berman to the Planning Commission. This was also made by Councilmember Weaver.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to read a little on Mr. Berman. He puts at least my resume to shame. He's lived in Glendale for over 40 years. And with just his background, education, Auburn Academy and Washington Walla Walla College, pre-med, back in the early 40s. Walla Walla College in music in the late 40s. University of Puget Sound Music and Engineering, and University of Washington Bachelor of Architecture. He did continuing education seminars and workshops, California State Polytechnic, University of West Texas, USC, UCLA, Tulane University, University of South Carolina, Pacific Lutheran College, Perkins School of Theology, and SMU. Professional, he's been an oral examiner on the State Board of Architectural Examiners, amongst a whole page of things. I'm just skipping to some. It's amazing. Architectural registration, National Council of Registration Boards in Washington, Oregon, Montana, Idaho, California, Nevada, Arizona, Texas, Wisconsin, Alabama, and Kentucky. He has a music background. He was a concert master in a Tacoma Community Band. He's been in architectural conferences in New York City, Montreal, Canada, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Georgia, Columbus, Indiana, New Orleans, Louisiana, Dallas, San Antonio, Texas, Colorado Springs, Marion Springs, Michigan, Harpoon Springs, Florida, Canadian Union College, Alberta, Canada. And he's been a guest lecturer places like Andrews University, Loma Linda University, Pacific Union College, Walla Walla College, Washington State University, Occidental College, Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo School of Architecture, Glendale High School, Los Angeles Exceptional Students Conference of Futures. That's just part of his long, long resume. And he also served on the commission in the city here back in the 70s. So this gentleman will sure bring a lot of background experience to the Planning Commission. I'm pleased to nominate him for that position.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
It just proves that people can do great things and they don't have to be graduate of USC. I had to get that in. That was just too good to pass off.
SC was in there somewhere. He lectured or something.
All right. Mr. Kasakian, please.
Council members Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Draymond?
Yes. All right. Next item, please.
City Council or staff comments?
Mr. Yusefian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to try to keep this short, but nevertheless, what I'm about to talk about is a little bit philosophical. As children, we look upon our parents to give us guidance. When a child falls down, stands up, looks at its mother to see what the mother's going to do, and if she goes, "Oh my God, what happened?" the child starts crying. If the mother doesn't say much, it's okay. The child doesn't cry, just walks by. As we get younger, we look upon our teachers to set examples for us. What is the right thing? What's the wrong thing? Go home and talk to our parents. As we grow up to be adults, we have people in the community that we look up to. Sometimes it's a sports figure, sometimes it's an actor, sometimes it's a leader in the community, and so on and so forth. We get a little bit older and we have our own children. In some cases, we look at politicians, we look at presidents, we look at judges, we look at senators, and what is it that they're doing, what type of message they're sending. I think as human beings, we learn from others and we grow, and we see what type of examples they set. Now, in the past 3 or 4 weeks, we have been going around and around on an issue. And I just want to say one thing that really disturbs me is the fact that as I sit there and I watch and I listen and I read, many say, what's the big deal? See, in my opinion, what the big deal is that we need to learn from history. What we do in the history, if we read it, we realize that human beings have a tendency to desensitize certain people about certain things. In World War I, people died in war. There were deaths. Later on, it was considered to be casualties, no longer called so many soldiers died. Last war, they're just collateral damage. As you could see, as time goes on, we are desensitizing people about human beings dying on a field. We do the same thing about other things. Many leaders in the other countries in the past have used the same exact techniques. Blamed a certain group for certain things, generalized, and later on eliminated them. And as I sat there and watched Larry Zarian's show last week, listening to a young man calling and saying, what is the big deal? So what the Councilman Weaver said? What's the big deal? I cringed. The big deal is that you do not generalize. That's how we get into trouble as human race. The Hutus and the Tutsis, they generalized. All the Hutus are responsible for all the ills of the Tutsis, and vice versa, and guess what? Tutsis. And we ended up having major massacres in Rwanda. Because the leaders generalized. That's what's wrong. That's what we were talking about. Now, I don't expect anything from Mr. Weaver. I've known him for 20 years, and I said it before. But the thing is, what is the exception of the public from me? What did the public expect from me? There's going to be some people who are not going to agree with me, and frankly, I don't care. Because I have not been able to live with myself for the last 4 weeks. Because I sat here and gave Mr. Weaver a pass. Didn't say anything. Said nothing. Said, live with your own conscience. I can't live with my own conscience. My conscience tells me what he did was wrong. He generalized and he blamed a large segment of this population for something that was a health issue. That was wrong. I don't care what that segment of population is. But for me as a council member, I have to stand up and say, what happened was wrong. I don't condone it. I don't accept it. And you know what? I just have to say, he has taken 4 of us and treated us like fools, played us like a fool, told us he didn't say it when the man on television said, he did. I'll swear to it. I'll take an oath and testify to that. So, I had to say this. I'm not expecting anything from Dave. As I said, I know him for 20 years. Actually, this is what happens when you know someone for so long. I know him actually more than my current wife. That's how well I know Dave. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Yusefian. Are there any other council or staff comments? Councilmember Najarian.
Looks like we both had some sleepless nights, Mr. Yusefian, in the past few weeks. It was on Monday, July 28th, that I first became aware of this controversy, that the smoking ills of Glendale were being hung around the necks of one ethnic group, and that this group was being made the scapegoat for the nasty habit, as reported in the Pasadena Weekly. It just wasn't clear who had said what and who had meant what. And I stated right at the start that although the comments reported were bigoted and amounted
to ethnic slurs, I would wait to learn the facts. I would not rush to judgment. Well, now it's time for my judgment. I heard from the Pasadena Weekly editor, Kevin Urich, and the reporter, Carl Kozlowski. It's clear now in my mind that although the Pasadena Weekly mixed up the mayor with Mr. Weaver, the rest of the story was accurate. I also learned that when given a second chance after the furor to recant, to correct, or disown those remarks, Mr. Weaver did none of those things. Further troubling me are the actions of Mr. Weaver, starting from the July 29th meeting, when he failed to admit to giving the interview to the Pasadena Weekly, quite literally leaving the mayor out hanging on a limb for a large part of the meeting. But later he recalled vaguely that he may have given an interview. As the public outcry erupted, he was absent from the next meeting, August 5th. And the next week, he only remained long enough to read a prepared statement. He refused to apologize and even denied making the statements. He insinuated that the reporter was a liar. That week, last week, I stated that without additional evidence, I could not attribute those remarks to Dave Weaver. The benefit of the doubt goes to the accused. You're presumed innocent until proven guilty, right? But Larry Zarian cleared away those clouds of doubt when he brought the reporter directly into our living rooms. The reporter said without a doubt, those were Mr. Weaver's words. Tonight, I believe that those were his words. That was his intent, and that was his meaning. I'm angry, and I resent the fact that he made those comments. And I'm even more angry that he sits before us, unrepentant, denying that he even made those remarks. He abused my trust when I gave him the benefit of the doubt last week. Now, as elected councilmen, we are held to higher standards of tolerance, sensitivity, ethics, and honesty. And when we fail to meet those standards, we deserve to be called out. I also know that we must move past this controversy. It could have been resolved on July 29th with a simple mea culpa, a simple apology. Well, here we are tonight. Should we agendize this item? No. Should we subpoena witnesses, subpoena documents, administer oaths under the penalty of perjury? No. Mr. Weaver, I'm extremely disappointed in your actions, and I personally condemn and denounce your actions and comments surrounding this incident, and I ask my colleagues to join me right now in doing so. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Quintero, Mr. Yusufian, will you join me in condemning and denouncing those comments?
I think I already did. I just did.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Najarian. Okay. Are there further council comments? Mr. Weaver, Mr. Quintero?
Nope.
Okay, I have a couple of comments of my own, but not on this subject. I hesitate to raise them now because it's such a heavy moment that it might do them some injustice, but I hate to bring up...
It's not a video, is it?
No, it's not a video. However, one is a serious, relates to a serious topic, and the other does not, but I still need to bring them up, I think, at this time. Mr. City Manager, are you aware if the city is planning anything for the 9/11 observance that is coming up?
We have in the last several years come to do a moment of silence and at times sort of personal recognition, but we've moved away in the last few years from the more formal events in Parcher Plaza. But we have done a moment of silence, usually recognizing it at a council meeting as well.
I've had several requests for clarification as to what the city is doing, if anything, and when I say the city, I don't mean what we ourselves as city employees might do, but what we might do to help the citizens of Glendale observe the day. And quite a few people have asked me whether or not we are going to have any observance such as we do for Memorial Day or other types of events, perhaps not that large a scale, but some kind of observance.
Mr. Mayor, if I can,
yes.
Going back for several years running, I don't recall exactly the number, we had a very formal ceremony out in Parcher Plaza for not just employees, but it was in the evening hours, employees, residents, rather large attendance at those events. Really, in checking with other communities in this area, there's been a tendency to pull back away from the more large formal events and then to have a more modest recognition, which we've done each year here at council meetings, and allow employees to have their own somewhat private events here on the civic grounds, but have not had a more formal ceremony like we did the first few years following the event itself.
Okay, thank you. The second issue has to do with, and this is the one that I'm sorry I have to juxtapose, Runway Fun Day. Mr. City Manager, you'll probably be aware of an email that was forwarded to you from a resident who points out that I hope I am not getting this wrong, the 80th anniversary of flight.
The Lindbergh flight.
Yes.
Well,
this is. It's not the 80th anniversary of that flight, it's the 80th anniversary of manned flight, but I think that what the writer was talking about was that the first scheduled transcontinental flight was Charles Lindbergh, and it apparently departed from our own field here in Glendale. And since it is the 80th anniversary of manned flight, the suggestion was that we create an event for the public commemorating that fact on the actual runway, which is a city street. I guess it happens to be on the Disney campus. And the gentleman was suggesting that we work to see if we can get this co-sponsored by Disney and perhaps ABC and the city and so on, to have an event called Runway Fun Day. And I'd like to know if we can at least take a look at it and see whether it is possible to do that, help facilitate that in the time that remains between now and that date.
I did take the liberty in a separate meeting that was not for this topic, but at which Mr. Ed Hoopla, who I think is Senior Vice President for Development for Disney, and has quite an attachment to the GC3 project and the terminal because he was the initial architect representing Disney working on the GC3 plan. I did raise the concept with him, and he said that they'd be very interested in meeting with us further on thoughts and ideas on how to recognize that. So if it's your pleasure, we'll certainly follow up.
Well, let's see what we can do that can be done to help the city celebrate this and therefore thereby become a closer community in the process. Okay. Yes, Mr. Yusefian.
I hate to belabor the point, but I think my colleague, Mr. Najarian, asked a question from all of us. And at this time, I would like to know if my other two colleagues are going to join him.
I didn't intend to bypass it. I just wanted to conclude this business first, Mr. Yusefian.
Because I will wait until
something freezes over, is it?
Well, no, I'm just hoping that happens because I don't want to put it on the agenda. So.
Let me just state for myself that I'm aware of the political dynamic that has been engendered here, and in my view, part of which I believe is driving some of this. I've made my comments already. I stick by them. They were prepared notes, and this has been archived, so anyone can take a look at and see what they were. I agree. Mr. Weaver had an opportunity to say his piece. He did read from a prepared statement. I spoke before he did, asking him and reminding him that the tone and the words he uttered were of great import. I also suggested to him that whether he felt he was quoted, misquoted, or something in between, or misunderstood, that a simple apology would be most appreciated by variety of segments of this city. However, that is not what Mr. Weaver chose to do. I have further stated, and I have been both cheered and derided for making the statement, can't help that, it's still my view, regardless, that I can't take an article that so fundamentally got it wrong and use that as the basis to bring about an official condemnation or a censure of Mr. Weaver. If I take his words in quotes, and we're being real liberal here as we're reading our statements, that he actually said it. The reporter said he said it. Well, I haven't heard Mr. Weaver deny that he said what's in quotes. I could be wrong. I haven't heard him say that. What I've heard him do is deny the attributions that the writer wrote about his quotes. I don't know what occurred. I don't know what occurred. But I do know that an article was written at great length quoting me when actually Mr. Weaver was the one who was interviewed. And I declined to give an interview to this reporter on this subject. To me, when you get something that fundamentally wrong, I can't then turn around and use that article as a basis for that kind of censure. And I'm using censure in the loose term, not the formal term, or in the figurative term. I stand by the statements I made before and those that I'm making now. That is as far as I will go on this. To me, the greater censure comes in the court of public opinion, not here with this. So, that's just for myself.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to restate what he was saying is, this is not about Mr. Weaver. What the question is, do you condone this type of comments? Do you condone the fact, or you say that you condemn people generalizing community for any purpose? And I think that's what I'm trying to get to, which this type of behavior, regardless of who it is.
I'm getting the evil eye.
Is it condonable? Yeah. Do we sit here and say it's political?
Do you want an answer or not?
I want an answer.
Well, the answer is that's not the question that Mr. Najarian asked. He didn't ask in the abstract, do we condemn those kinds of comments? He asked specifically if we would join him in an official condemnation of Mr. Weaver.
Not official.
Regardless. It wasn't about the abstract point. And so if you want to ask a question that is different from that, that's fine. But my answer will still be the same. Do I condemn comments that can be construed to be hurtful and ethnically insensitive? Absolutely. But if you're asking me, will I condemn Mr. Weaver based on the Pasadena Weekly story, which got it completely wrong with the most basic of fundamental journalistic issues, which is getting the right name attached to the right person you're interviewing when you contend that that person is the mayor of the third largest city in the county? I'm sorry, I can't use that as a means to officially condemn anyone, let alone a sitting council person. So that's my answer.
I generally agree with Mr. Draymond's comments. I made my comments, was it last week? And I didn't get a chance to watch the Larry Zarian show. I rarely do. So I don't know what news or what facts were brought up in that show. But I generally agree with Mr. Draymond.
Mr. City Attorney.
I'm hoping that we've exhausted this because I believe the council is pushing the Brown Act envelope on two fronts. One of which is keeping matters of personal comments brief, and the other is calling out or requesting a collective concurrence by fellow council members on items that are not on the agenda. So I just want to advise a word of caution on both those areas as I think we move down that slippery slope.
Then, Mr. Mayor, I request this item to be put on the agenda.
Is there consensus to do so?
Yes. I'll vote for it.
Mr. Weaver.
Of course not.
I do not wish to place it on the agenda either.
Mr. Mayor, it is my understanding.
Aren't we seeking consensus on an issue?
We're not seeking consensus.
Actually, on an issue, that's the one thing the Attorney General notes that you can, without getting into the merits, yes or no on the agenda, that can be done. The Attorney General has indicated that that is not a collective concurrence of action taken on an item that's within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council, which the public needs to be part of and observe the debate and decisions. So there will be no debate, can't get into the merits, just yes or no.
Well, we didn't hear from the rest.
some of the rest.
It was a 2-2. What does Frank want to do?
Frank was no.
No, all three of us.
Okay.
Okay. All right. If there are no other, are there any staff comments? No. All right. Let us move on to the next item, please.
Next item is consent items, including minutes following a routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
Okay, I have requested pull 5D like David. And anything? And 5C like Cat. All right. Do we have a motion for the remaining consent items?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the remaining consent items 5A, B, E, and E. Okay. Mr. Kasakian.
Council members Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Draymond?
Yes. Okay. Could we hear the item at 5C?
C is City Auditor regarding annual report of the internal audit function. At C1 is motion accepting and filing the internal audit annual report.
Thank you. Mr. Quintero.
I would like our internal auditor to let the public know, just to give them a general idea of what it is that he's accomplished this year and goes about setting up his work, et cetera, et cetera.
Is this on or not?
Yes, it is.
Yes. Thank you. Members of council, I'd like to briefly go through and
Excuse me, sir. Would you mind? I'm just teasing. Okay. Would you please state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Bill Fox. I'm the city auditor. During the past year, the internal audit group performed 39 different audits, and they were of all different types. We've performed financial audits, contract audits, operational audits, and information system type audits. The type of audits that we perform are based upon getting variable inputs from a number of different sources, which includes council input, audit committee input, the management within the organization, and then from our own internal risk assessment. We, on an annual basis, go through and try to identify and do the work that's most important to the organization. What we find when we do our auditing is that we end up doing about half of what we initially think we're going to do based upon our initial audit plan, and then during the course of the year, requests come in from different sources of things that are of a high priority nature that we want to go and assist management with. So we find that we don't always get exactly done what we want, but we try to accomplish the things that are the most important to the organization through a prioritization process. Our audits are based upon taking a look at past history. If we've had a problem in an area in the past, we will go back and audit it. We use a cycle approach where we'll go back and we'll look at things usually on a 3-year cycle basis. If it's something that's of a very high risk nature, we'll look at it on an annual basis or maybe once every 2 years. But all in all, we try to do our work based upon limited resources that we have and focusing on the things that are most important to the organization.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fox.
I'll move 5C.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I have one question.
Mr. Yusefian.
On page 2, you have that chart that says completed audit by departments. And then you have all this number system there. What does those numbers mean? 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 6.
Yeah, Councilman Yusefian, those numbers represent for each one of those departments the number of audits performed for that particular department.
Okay, so it's one audit. So
Yes.
one of them that has, like finance, 10 audits, that means you audit them 10 times.
We did 10 different audits in
During
the
a
finance.
year.
In this past year, we did 10 audits in the finance area.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Mr. Kasakian, if we could call the roll.
Council members Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Draymond?
Yes. Could we hear the item at 5D like Draymond?
5D is Director of Public Works regarding Glendale Parking Facility Joint Powers Agreement. At D1 is a resolution approving the Third Amendment to the existing joint exercise of powers agreement of the Glendale Parking Facilities Joint Powers Authority.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Najarian.
Thanks. I asked this to be pulled, and I have a couple of questions on this joint powers authority that we have. Are we now pulling in the college's structure as part of the joint powers, or just the surface lot that's up there?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Najarian, it is the structure and the surface lots. So in the original JPA, the surface lots were designated a certain way with a number of spaces. Obviously, those have been impacted by the construction of the garage, so those have been renamed. So this is the garage and the remaining surface lots that are off of Mountain.
And this is mainly used to pool funds to use for maintenance and operations. Is that generally what we do?
Correct. It was originally formed to issue bonds for parking maintenance and construction, and now it's, as we go on, it's for the maintenance of the facilities.
If it was the city's desire to use an existing parking lot, such as the one right there at the corner of Mountain and Verdugo, for a purpose, a city purpose, would we be able to remove that land from the JPA, or is there some sort of lease where it's leased to the JPA and we can't use it for any other purpose besides parking?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Najarian, I'd have to seek advice from the city attorney's office, but I believe is the way the facilities were laid out when the original bond was issued, that those facilities have to remain intact as they are until that bond is retired.
Until the bond's paid off. That's correct.
So we can't use it for a swimming pool location?
We would have to, we can check the bond indenture.
Might have to pay the bond off.
I mean, I'm just thinking ahead here, trying to...
When is the bond going to go?
We refinanced the bond, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Safian, about 5 years ago. I believe we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 years left on that. I'll have to double check that, but I believe we're in the neighborhood of about 12 years.
And JPA is for how long? 12 years?
The life of the bond, unless we so choose to make it go longer.
So this is for life of the bond?
Right.
Mr. Mayor, the likelihood is, although that may be the way the JPA is structured, obviously the JPA's interest and the bondholder's interest would be on not impairing the revenue stream. So it's very possible you could go in and in some way, while utilizing one or more of the lots, also look at ways of expanding the lots or the amount of revenues that would be committed to ensure that the bonds wouldn't necessarily be impaired.
There are options. We could look at reducing the bonds. We could certainly look at the revenue stream. We could part of that, though, would include initially looking at the bond indenture.
Right. Correct. Mr. Starr is absolutely right. And the debt subordination on the bond is the bond gets paid first, and everybody else gets paid after that. So, and if that particular lot, the city lots aren't the major contributor to the revenue stream for the JPA. The college lots are the major contributor for the overall revenue stream. So, again, we can look at that and bring that back if that's something you'd like.
I would if there's a consensus, I guess. If I get the vote, a couple other votes on that.
I think the...
shop for votes here.
Yes, I don't think you need to shop for votes. I think that there is a...
Please do. I'd like to see that. And that's all I have on that, Mr.
All right.
Mayor.
All right. Is there any other discussion on that?
I'll move it.
It's 5D. 5D. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Kasakian?
Council members Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Draymond?
Yes. We can move on to the next item, please.
6 is oral communication.
And at this point in the evening, ladies and gentlemen, we remind you that oral communications as an agendized item, thank you, is at the end of the agendized items. However, we do ask people who would like to come forward at this time to make a public announcement to do so if they are willing to limit their time voluntarily to 3 minutes. And we do have one speaker. It's David Buchanan with McKesson Empowering Healthcare.
Thank you, Your Honor, and members of the council. I'll keep my comments brief. The reason why I want to just speak for you for just a moment is McKesson was hired by Medi-Cal at the State Department of Healthcare Services to provide a pilot program in Alameda and Los Angeles counties to provide disease management services. If a member had one of 6 chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, things like that, what we do is work with that individual to make them aware of how to better self-manage their disease, so therefore they'll have healthier outcomes, and then in turn save the state's Medi-Cal program dollars. Los Angeles County, predominantly the Glendale, Burbank, and Hollywood areas, are impacted by this voluntary program because a number of Armenians were selected to be a part of the population. There's a high incidence of some of these chronic illnesses within that population. So we're working closely with leaders in the Armenian community to encourage them to be a part of this voluntary program that gives them access to a nurse 24 hours a day and helps educate them on how to better self-manage their disease. I come before you this evening just to make mention of the program. I know there are members of the community that watch this show and enjoy hearing about how their community is working to help improve their lives and in this community. And so all I do is want to make you aware of the program. We've had some difficulties impacting the Armenians because it's a rather closed society, and so therefore we've actually reached out to them, brought in some Armenian staff, and I don't mean that the wrong way, because I didn't want to go there.
Thank you. Do not generalize.
I'm not generalizing.
Thank you.
But in turn, we've tried to improve our communication efforts and our outreach efforts to reach the population, and it's improving. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you this evening. I brought some materials both in English and in Armenian to show you how we're trying to outreach this community, and thank you very much.
Let me just ask you, Mr. Buchanan, what is I've had some of my colleagues whisper to me, what is the disease?
Is
it manifested on this dais? It's okay.
If an individual, through their Medi-Cal claims, has one of 6 chronic illnesses: asthma, diabetes, chronic coronary artery disease, COPD, atherosclerotic disease syndrome, and the 6th one escapes me right now, based on their claims, through Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal determines them eligible. They send that name and individual and claims information to McKesson, and we do outreach to them. We have a nurse that calls them, speaks to them, we send them material, and in turn, during this 3-year pilot program that we're a year into it, we get them to engage with us. Hopefully, by the time we've spent time with them over the 3 years, educated them on how to better manage their disease, they're healthier, and they cost the Medi-Cal system less money.
Thank you very much for...
and I brought some materials. I'll leave that with the clerk.
If you could leave that with the city clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. Okay. All right. Our next item, please.
Next item is action items, and is Director of Planning regarding the La Crescenta Design Guidelines. At 8A1 is a motion directing staff to develop approach and guiding principles for city design guidelines utilizing La Crescenta as initial case study. Planning Department would report back to City Council by end of 2008.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kasakian. Let us go to the Director of Planning, Mr. Hagani.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, actually this item, we added a staff report to this item because we heard that a member of the town council up in La Crescenta is coming to present the proposed design guidelines for the area. And we have been in communication, and we have been contacted by the members of the community about starting an interjurisdictional work program so that we can actually identify a sub-regional kind of planning set of goals for the area. And we took advantage of the opportunity that we heard that the community member was coming to give you a presentation, and we added the staff report. However, the presentation is not part of the Planning Department staff report. So we thought, and we had heard from the council before, that you wanted us to start a planning process in the Crescenta Valley area, and we thought this was the opportune time to get direction from the council after you hear the presentation that you are hearing tonight, to give us direction, if you'd like, for the Planning Department to use La Crescenta as a pilot program in our design guidelines update.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hagani. We have speaker cards, but I think the first speaker is Rich Toyen, who, as I understand it, is going to do the presentation itself. Why don't you come forward? How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Good evening.
Good.
I wasn't really prepared to do a presentation of it, although I would be happy to.
Well, I was misinformed.
That's all right.
Well, before we go to you then, Mr. Toyen, let me just ask my colleagues if they have questions or comments before we go to the speaker cards. Mr.
Just to put this in context, that I understand that that these community standards were approved by the county supervisors this week, covering Foothill Boulevard, and that the suggestion is that Glendale coordinate its efforts to adopt some of the principles and be consistent with what was approved. So we've got one consistent neighborhood rather than the disparity between Glendale's planning standards and what was just passed, and perhaps La Cañada, next town down, up to Sunland, Tahunga. Is that correct?
Indeed.
That's just so I have the proper...
The only thing that is different is that the LA County Planning Commission approved unanimously this Community Standards District. The next step is the Board of Supervisors, but that really is a formality at this point.
Before we go further, Mr. Toyan, could you state your name for the record?
Yes, Richard Toyan, and I am a member of, former member of the Crescenta Valley Town Council. I was the co-chairperson of the Foothill Design Committee, which was the subcommittee of the Crescenta Valley Town Council that was instituted to study design issues along Foothill Boulevard. And I'm still co-chairperson, and I'm also one of the authors of the document.
Okay. Let me go to Mr. Quintero.
Well, let me just say I'm very impressed with what the committee has put together, and I'm happy that the county is headed in the right direction, and I do think our planning staff and our general plan has to dovetail with what the county portion of La Crescenta is doing, with what La Cañada Flint Ridge has done, because to me that Foothill Boulevard region, I guess you would call it, it really is to me one design area that I think has to have the cohesiveness, and I'm just looking forward to Hassan and his staff working on it, because I think they've gotten the idea, and I think they're going to come up with a plan that's going to benefit all of the residents of Foothill and La Crescenta in general, the business and the homeowners there. So I'm looking forward to working on it, and congratulations to you and your group. I think you did an excellent job.
My hair was black when I started.
Mr. Yusefian, do you have anything to add before we go forward? Or?
No comment.
Mr. Weaver? Mr. Toyan, since I knew you were involved with the organization, I sort of put you up there, but I don't mean to take away from your time. Please take your time to make your personal presentation then.
Well, thank you. If I could pass these.
Absolutely.
As I had mentioned, I am a member of the Foothill Design Committee. We are a subcommittee of the Crescenta Valley Town Council. And about 6 years ago, we were formed to study design standards on Foothill Boulevard in the unincorporated area of La Crescenta, that being Foothill Boulevard, our commercial corridor. Over the years, there's been a number of lackluster, featureless, somewhat less than laudable buildings that have been developed along Foothill Boulevard, and thus we petitioned the County of Los Angeles to specifically institute design standards. The county has never dealt with any kind of aesthetics whatsoever, although they do have the vehicle of a community standards district, which is basically an overlay zone for design standards. And what we're after is simply meaningful architecture, true architecture, meaningful for both the development and the community, because we really believe and truly believe and ardently believe that good design is good business. What we're trying to do is keep our shoppers in town. We're trying to attract more shoppers. We're trying to get our shoppers to get out of their cars and walk along Foothill Boulevard. As I had mentioned, the LA County Planning Commission unanimously approved our Community Standards District, and now it's just a small formality with the Board of Supervisors to finally approve it. The City of Glendale has a document called Urban Design Guidelines, which I passed out to you. And in there, they have descriptions of various commercial areas. And the area of study area number 1 for Foothill Boulevard in Glendale, La Crescenta, Just to paraphrase it, it says, "A variety of building styles and site configurations are represented along this corridor, and because of this, Foothill Boulevard presently lacks a coherent development pattern." And while that may be true, it does nothing really to raise the bar of design standards for design and for development along Foothill Boulevard in Glendale, La Crescenta. Several projects that have come before the Glendale Design Review Board that have been rejected based upon design. Oftentimes, the developer or the agent or the owner or the architect will read that exact same passage, and basically what they're saying, if this says that's all that is there, why do I have to do anything different, or why do I have to do anything that excels or exceeds that level? In our first year of study, we met with Elaine Wilkerson, who was the then director of planning, and she was quite excited over what we were doing, and she was very much wanted to be kept in the loop about it, because as she felt that there would be a design continuum along Foothill Boulevard, more of a community description, rather than having good design stop at Pennsylvania Avenue and then possibly pick it up later at another place along the boulevard. So we created the Community Standards District. It was 6 years in the making. We went through a number of permutations of it, but it has finally been approved, and we would like to request that the design staff continue to take an interest in what we have produced and possibly use it as an example for a future inclusion of a like document in the Glendale, La Crescenta area. We would also like to formally request that design descriptions be rewritten in the urban design guidelines so that they set the standard a little bit higher, because we're talking about all of La Crescenta as a community, not with design borders. But in order to do it, of course, we need the council's help. If I can take any questions, thank you.
We will get to some questions at the end.
Sure.
So don't leave us. But I thank you for your comments, and we will hear the next speaker and then come back to comments and questions from the council.
Certainly.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sandra Enslow, followed by Sharon Weissman.
Mr. Mayor and distinguished members of the council, my name is Sandra Enslow. I live in Glendale, and I'm proud to be part of this city. I also have 35 years in the Crescenta Valley, and I am a member of the Historical Society of the Crescenta Valley, and I'm really excited, and I want to support getting some design standards for the Glendale City portion of Foothill. I want us, the city of Glendale, to be a good neighbor to not only the city of Los Angeles, but to the unincorporated La Crescenta, and also to La Cañada City. I want us to see design standards that are cohesive. And the standards set up by Richard Toyon and his group are really strong. They're prudent, and they're visionary for this valley. I think that Glendale's part of this valley, and I hope that it will be of an economic value to the city for us to do this. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Enslow. Sharon Weissman, followed by David Myers.
Hello, I'm Sharon Weissman from Far North Glendale. And first of all, I want to thank you for considering design standards for our portion of the city. I'm a member of the Far North Glendale Homeowners Association and of the Crescenta Valley Heritage Steering Committee, and I spent a lot of time tabling in the Montrose Harvest Market, and that gives me an opportunity to listen to a lot of my neighbors throughout the Crescenta Valley, and those of us who live in the city of Glendale do trust the design guidelines that our neighbors in the unincorporated area spent many years formulating and gathering thoughts from our neighbors, like I said, in the unincorporated area. We support their standards. Hope you will consider them. And in addition to the architecture and the design standards, there is a great deal, I know that's not in this particular topic, but there's a great deal of concern about overdevelopment. So in addition to just the quality of the design, just the size and the massiveness is of concern to our neighbors. And thank you again for your time, and we hope you pursue this. Thanks.
A quick question, Ms. Wiseman. Is there a homeowner group that association that encompasses any part of Foothill Boulevard?
Yes.
What are they?
Where it's the Far North Glendale homeowners
Really what it's called?
subcommittee. It's a little complicated. We're somewhat different. We're part of the Crescenta Valley Community Association, which is a cross-jurisdictional group that includes many organizations throughout, as we say, from Sunland to Hunga, through our Glendale portion from Lowell to Pennsylvania, then the unincorporated area in La Cañada, Flint Ridge, on to Hahamunga, which is in actually part of Pasadena at the very end. And our group is very small, less than a year old, and it is we meet concurrently with the Crescenta Valley Community Association, which coincidentally meets tomorrow. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to invite everyone to the Briggs Sheriff Station Community Room on Briggs, north of north of Foothill Boulevard in La Crescenta, and the meeting starts at 7, and we'd love more input from others who may not be aware of it. It's a very small group, and we did not have a formal vote, so I'm speaking as an individual. I can just tell you I've heard from a lot of my neighbors that they do concur with our standards. We do think of ourselves as one community throughout the Crescenta Valley, and Foothill Boulevard is our main street. And yes, there are a lot of car-related businesses, and we'd like to see them perhaps replaced with more interesting kinds of businesses. But unfortunately, where the development is on the south side of the street, which is not the car-related businesses. Those are on the north side of the street, and they seem to be, untouched by potential development. So again, thank you for your consideration of our hinterlands part of Glendale.
Thank you, Ms. Weissman. David Myers.
Mr. Myers is unfortunately not here yet. He asked me to put a card in for him. Perhaps if he could put it to the end of the stack. He's working and will be here as soon as he can.
Well, I'll put it all the way at the bottom of the stack.
Thank you.
Okay. Barbara Hannigan.
I'm Barbara Hannigan. I live in La Crescenta. And I just want to briefly say, and sort of echo what everyone has said, that I just completely support this motion. I think it would be brilliant to have a vision, a cohesive plan for the Crescenta Valley, so there's not just this kind of willy-nilly plan that's sort of in place at this point. And just think how this would help to streamline the design review process. It would be invaluable. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hannigan. Now that we're at the bottom of the stack, David Myers is still not here. So
that was a small stack.
The small stack, Mr.
You may have one coming up.
Oh, there's one coming.
I will.
It just made it to the bottom again.
You're up.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Second. Stuart Biles.
Told you, you're up.
We're about to close the public comment portion on this.
You insist.
Yes, it's...
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, City Council. Just to take a brief minute, my name is Stuart Biles. I was one of the troika that wrote and produced the community standards districts for the county section of La Crescenta, and just wanted to say that we hope that the planning staff will work closely with the county section, the unincorporated section, to come up with something that's going to be cohesive for La Crescenta. It's the city has much to give and many ways to do this that the county portion can't do, but we hope to come up with something that will be the best for La Crescenta and Foothill Boulevard that responds to this great intermontane valley that is up there, and we hope that we will be doing this rather soon. That's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Biles. Mr. Youssef.
Sir, if you don't mind, were you responsible for this document?
Yes.
Is that what it is? Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a question about this document. As I was going through it, there are some examples given, and it says like it's flat, has no character, and so on and so forth. I see a lot of that in a lot of the projects. I'm assuming the ones that are on top These are the examples of the good ones?
That's correct.
Because there were no subtitles on the bottom, so just say, do this. All it says is, don't do this, don't do that.
We hoped that it was pretty obvious that those below the black line essentially were the ones that were doomed to be submerged in
Thank you.
schlock. So,
Thank
yes.
you for the clarification. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public comment period on this. You need to turn them in to the city.
Is this for oral communication? This isn't oral communication
Oral
yet.
communication. This is just public comment on
Oh,
item
Marcus Center.
8A, which is dealing with the design for the Foothill Corridor, although we would certainly welcome your comments on it. There are people on both sides. Is there anyone else that wanted to speak on this topic who has not turned in a card? Let me put it that way. This is item 8A. This is the Foothill Design Guidelines discussion. I'm not seeing anybody raising any hands.
So it's not about the Foothill design.
So the people who have not turned in cards wanted to speak with oral communications. You can still certainly turn in cards for that. You would turn those into the city clerk, Mr. Kasakian. Okay.
Well,
Okay.
I think they're confused.
Sounds like they may have already.
Okay. All right. We are going to move on.
It's not about the design guidelines.
Yes, you will be next, on the next item. Thank you. Just hang in there.
Just to clarify, I have no further cards for this item.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Quintero.
Okay, well, once again, I think we're all looking, not only the speakers, people that live in that area are looking for design standards that are cohesive. And I personally, and I'm sure others agree with me, I'm concerned about overdevelopment. So when we come up with these design standards, I assume we're also going to look at the actual massing, the size of buildings, etc. And I also assume that that's going to take some downzoning, that's going to take some actual votes to reduce the FAR, etc.
Mr. Mayor, if I may answer the question.
Please, Mr. Downey.
Yes, quite possibly. We have been actually reviewing, and we've been following this whole process that has been happening up there with the design guidelines, and I've been reviewing the latest iterations of the document. Some of the standards that are presented in this document would actually, if they were to be implemented in Glendale, they would require zone changes. And some of them, quite a few of them, could be incorporated in our design guidelines, including some of the standards that they have put in the document could be in our design guidelines. It has to do with the way that our system works here, and we have a design review process, and our zoning code and the design review process go hand in hand, but they're separate issues. But it's quite possible to incorporate all of them, and we would come back to you with a proposal on which pieces could go in the design guidelines and an updated design guideline for the area, and which pieces would go in through a zone change.
And do you have any idea of when you may be coming back to us, at least with the preliminary?
I think within a few short months, we would be able to have at least a couple of meetings to get a sense of the vision for the community, and we expect to be able to give a report back to you with the follow-up work program that would follow that by the end of the summer. No, I'm sorry, by the end of the fall, perhaps? By the end of the year, we would give you a first set of reports. It would take some outreach on our part to actually have some meetings with the community. Of course, the meetings would involve people from Glendale and the city of Glendale, and people from the county area, and even people from La Cañada if they'd like to, because we do understand the concept. And the planning department, by the way, has been aware of this. And I must say, our design guideline language has been weak to us. We've been aware of that for a number of years as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Najarian.
Thank you. I'm very excited about these design guidelines in the La Crescenta unincorporated area, and I hope that, and I know that our planning staff will have a good chance to go through all these, speaking with Mr. Cloyne and Mr. Biles, and I'd also like you to find out if there are any good ideas that did not make it in their guidelines, which they would suggest us to do. I'm concerned with parking issues. Parking is a problem up there. It can easily spill over into the neighborhood. So to the extent that parking becomes a feature of the design guidelines, I'd like that to be addressed in the way that only you and your staff can. I think everyone in that area will be pleased to see. I'm predicting that our city staff will be much more responsive, and it won't take 5 years. How long, Mr. Toyan? 5, 6 years to do that. We have a good group, Mr. Platt, et cetera, and our urban designer. Let's include a landscaping portion because it does get hot up there, and I think trees and a nice palette. I saw that they do have some, what do you call it, the palette of trees, which we should also keep into account. Does this include development guidelines also? And we're talking about design, but are we going to, the speaker said there's too much automotive use. The last time we did that was on San Fernando Road. Mr. Massihis remembers that. I know we've had some discussions previously, but one of the issues was too much auto repair, too much automotive-based industry. They wanted more pedestrian. I think a lot of the same comments that we heard on San Fernando are reflective of that region. So if you could think about that as well, not just design, but use as well. And I'm very excited to move forward. This is the common thread. Foothill Boulevard is the common thread that links all our cities. Famous Route 66, and I'm not sure if that was part of the Camino Real in portions or not. I know Mr. Toyan knows all about that, but I'm probably misquoting anyway. But let's do a good job. We should have a seamless, beautiful, and there are some really, no offense, some really bad examples of construction, properties, maintenance up there. And there are some very good. So we can focus on shifting those poorly designed and maintained properties into something very either historical in nature, craftsman, mission, et cetera. I think the entire region will benefit. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Najarian. Councilmember Yusefian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a good step. I think this is the first step we're going to take in creating design guidelines for the rest of the city, too. It's just that La Crescenta is going to be the first one out the door, so there we're going to start with them first. There was a person who sent me an email, and I guess we all got it, Mr. Wolf, and he had some questions on that, and I wanted the city attorney to have an opportunity to kind of chime in. I know what the answers on some of these things are, but I think you need to do that because I'm pretty sure Mr. Wolf is watching since he says he was not able to come in here. One of them has to do with neon signs. Neon signs need to go. It's starting to make the street look like Hollywood Boulevard. I think that's something that you guys can deal in the guidelines. Whether it's good or bad, I don't know. I think that needs to be debated. The thing that I think the English signs need to be adopted immediately, since there are too many signs along Foothill that have no English on them. And the question is, while we can deal with the size of the sign, the color of the sign, the location of the sign, Mr. City Attorney, could you tell me if we can control the content of the sign?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Yusefian, I think, as you noted, you probably know the answer to many of these, and the courts have indicated that we cannot regulate content, and the courts have actually spoken on the issue of these what will sometimes be referred to as English-only signs, and the court has noted that that is a First Amendment issue where we need to tread very, very lightly. There are some potential public safety concerns, such as notification for the fire department of particular chemicals or the like, and identification, but general language in the sign we will not be able to regulate.
Okay. I'm not going to read the rest of them because they're, they kind of follow that line. So I hope that Mr. Wolf was watching this. There are certain court rulings that stop us. Believe me, there are times I drive down on Foothill and I just have no clue what that store is because I can't read the language. And so, but, the that's the way it is. I think the shop owner, if was smart, would put whatever language it is, plus the English one, so maybe they can double on their customer base. Nevertheless, I think it's a good start. One thing that I'm kind of confused, and please help me with that, is this is what the gentleman said they worked on. I have another one in front of me. Which one of these are the ones that the county adopted? First one or second one?
Actually, they adopted both.
Both of them?
Mr. Toyan, if you're going to speak, you need to come to the microphone.
The county adopted both. The standards become part of the county code for La Crescenta, and the design guidelines are, in essence, the dummies guide, or the English equivalent, the easier to understand equivalent of those.
I'll tell you, design guidelines are going to be very, very important, because in this city we've had codes, and codes are interpreted a certain way, but the outcome is not what you really want to see. The design guidelines are what tell design review boards, it tells architects, it tells the community what the final product is going to look like. And to me, I think the design guidelines are far, far important than the code itself to an extent. While it's important, but a design guideline will get you the desired result that you're looking for.
Right.
So I think this is very important. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Mr. Weaver.
Having driven on that foothill off and on over the last 50 years, I guess it'd be the last part of the city or county to start getting revitalized, if you want to use that word. There's better terms for it. You're going in and out of the city and into the county. There's no uniformity on it. The guidelines up there have to be totally unique. With the slope that you have there from one side to the other, you're talking a lot about views. You have power lines in the city portion. I think the county's put theirs under. So it's a mishmash. And there's going to be increased demand to try to develop the land to its maximum use. And we're going to probably have to look at if our zoning is correct in the area, or will we have to downzone or adjust heights or whatever due to the demand that's going to be put on by people coming in and doing the due diligence and find out they can put a 3-story and they can block views, so on. So the time has come. Well, it's past the time. We should have done this before. But we got to get rolling on this and see when we can get a cohesive plan for that whole foothill area there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weaver. Yes, sir.
On a different subject, while we're on Foothill Boulevard, got several emails, but a while back, this council did a study what the cost will be to underground. That was a while back. Things have changed.
Expensive.
So I would like to get that back. I want to know from GWP what the cost is to underground our part. County's done, La Cañada part is done. We looked at our section, and at that point it was very expensive, but we still keep getting emails saying, why aren't you doing this? So I like to know what the updated amount is, what the cost will be to the city, and so I think that's going to be very important if we're looking at the way it looks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yusefian.
Is that okay? Is there consensus for that? I got to check from now on. I have no clue. You have to do that.
Yeah, no, I'm all for it, and I'm just curious. There's no one here from GWP, but can it be, maybe Mr. Zern knows, can it be underground on the asphalt portion? Can it be done on the street, or does it have to go through the sidewalk portion?
You got to connect.
Let me
City
try.
Manager.
You can probably do it either way. I imagine that the county area was done, of course, by Edison under what's called Rule 20, money. Edison is required, at least has been required, to set aside money for undergrounding. That allows counties and cities that are in Edison territory usually to take rather small areas. Usually takes a long time to build up enough money to underground utilities. One of the drawbacks is you have to form an undergrounding utility district because there are costs to the property owner as well. And you might recall the last time we took this up, all of the commercial properties essentially said, well, if it's going to cost us anything, we don't want it. But we'll update that report. No doubt it hasn't gotten less expensive. It's gotten more expensive. But we'll update it and bring it back to you. I would imagine undergrounding, you can do it in the asphalt area. And then you just have to bore under the sidewalk to get the underground utilities into the private property.
Yeah, it just seems to me that's a lot cheaper than having to
Sure it is.
pour concrete.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right.
You want a motion?
Well, there is a motion, so we will need a motion in a second. All right.
You didn't get to say anything.
I didn't, there's been nothing that has been said that, or there's nothing I could say that hasn't already been said by one of my colleagues. Obviously, I know the area very well, grew up in the area. Actually, 1 block south of Foothill Boulevard is where I grew up. In the days when Foothill Boulevard was orange and lemon groves. So that's where I grew up playing, in orange and lemon groves along Foothill Boulevard when they were still plowed by horse, believe it or not. And then Mr. what's his name?
How old are you?
I'm younger than you. And then that horse would be walked down to a southerly part of La Crescenta and stabled in a barn there. And in any case, I've seen a great deal of change there when those orange groves went away and the strip malls came and the car lots came, and it became as has been pointed out, a hodgepodge of this and that with nothing cohesive. I think what some people have to remember when they look at this is that stretch is sort of the new kid when it comes to the city of Glendale. It was recently acquired. It was an annex by the city of Glendale in the 50s. And so it was not originally part of the city of Glendale, and so all kinds of changes in jurisdiction overlapping there that has created sort of a hodgepodge of designs and styles and codes and ordinances. Also, because the area was divided up in the 50s, doesn't mean that the residents there suddenly changed their perspective of their own surroundings. They still view themselves as residents of La Crescenta. Many don't even understand where the city of Glendale starts and stops and starts again, and what is the unincorporated portion. They don't look at the middle of Pennsylvania Avenue as the Brandenburg Gates. They just view it as another street. And so there is a cohesiveness there within the Crescenta Valley amongst the residents, even though they don't share the same municipality technically. So there are a lot of reasons and a lot of issues that have contributed to what is there now. Certainly endorse moving forward with this.
I make the motion.
All right. And is there a second?
So I thought I made the
motion. Oh, you did make the motion. Then would you like to second that, Mr. Yusefian? All right. Further discussion? Mr. City Clerk.
Council members Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Draymond?
Yes. All right. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communication.
Let me go to our speaker cards. Our first speaker is Gagig Rostamian, followed by Robert O'Sullivan.
I've been asked to translate, if that's okay.
Բարևձեզ, իմանն է Գագիկ Ռոստոմյանն է, ես 15 տարի աշխատում եմ Central Park tennis court-երում որպես coach.
His name is Gagik Rostamian. He works at the tennis court for the last 15 years.
Ես այսօր երկու պատճառով եմ եկել ստեղ, մեկը ուրախալի է, մյուսը ոչ։ Ուրեմն մեր դպրոցի
He's come here for 2 reasons. First is bring good news, the other one not so much.
Առաջինը որ մեր դպրոցի ուսանող, մեր դպրոցի սանը Ալեքս Հալեբյանը 10 օր առաջ դարձավ աշխարհի չեմպիոն թենիսի Չեխոսլովակիայում, Եվրոպայում, Ալեքս Հալեբյան.
Alex Halibian, who is one of their members, just became a world champion in tennis.
Իսկ երկրորդն էլ, որ մենք լսեցինք, որ այս կորտերը նորից ուզում են փակել, ու մենք ուզում ենք իմանանք պատճառը, ու ես երեխաների անունից ուզում եմ
They've heard that you're trying to close the tennis courts again, and they want to know the reason as to why.
Ես երեխաները ուզում եմ խնդրեմ, եթե հանկարծ այս կորտերը փակելուց լինեք, որ այդ երեխաների հարցը լուծեք, որ իրենք կարողանան ինչ-որ միտեղ խաղան։
He wants to make sure that if you are going to close the tennis courts, to ensure that there is another location where the kids can play.
Օգոստոսի 12-ին տելևիզորով ես տեսա, որ տարիքով կանայք ելույթ են ունենում ու ասում էին, որ այդ կորտերը քանդեն, բայց իրանք չգիտեն, որ երեխաները իմտիխան են կորտերից։
During the August 12th meeting of the city council there were several community members who were older who requested that these tennis courts be tore down. They're taking away something from the kids.
Ես երեխաների առնից խնդրում եմ, որ եթե հանգարց կորտերը փակվի, իրանք ինչ-որ տեղ որ իրանք պարապեն, շնորհակալություն։
On behalf of the kids that play at the tennis courts, he's asking you if you decide to close it, to make sure that there's another place that they can go.
Thank you, Mr. Rostamian. From the staff, could we quickly get them an answer related to what is going on? I assume he means at Central Park.
I presume that's it.
Yeah. If we could.
Let me, Mr. Mayor,
Right.
you've approved the design and going out to bid on the building. We have delayed as long as possible actually taking out the tennis courts. I don't know what the timing is for removing the courts, but with the bids due to come in within probably the next 60 days or so, I would imagine that they'll follow shortly after that. So probably by the end of the calendar year, the courts will be coming out. You've authorized us to do a design at Fremont Park to increase the tennis courts there. The EIR on the project requires at least one additional tennis court for replacement, and you directed Parks and Recreation to look at doing a center court kind of design at Fremont, and that's due to come back to you in the near future.
All right. And for the record, he is correct. There were a number of people that asked for them to be removed, but there were also many seniors and others who asked for them to stay as well. Okay. The next speaker is Robert O'Sullivan, followed by Rolinda Giesmeyer.
Mayor Draymond and distinguished city council members. The proposed construction of the Adult Recreation Center will take away a revenue and income generating...
Could you please state your name for the record?
I'm sorry.
That's right.
My name is Robert O'Sullivan.
Thank you.
The proposed construction of the Adult Recreation Center will take away a revenue and income generating facility, as well as cancel out a more than worthwhile tennis academy that provides after-school activities and scholarships to lower income families. Twice before, I have spoken before the City Council, and twice before we have circulated petitions to prevent the closure of the Central Park facility. I now understand that the plan has been approved, funding issues settled, and is in plan check. I wanted to ask you if any consideration or thought for the several hundred tennis players and students who will be displaced, or a replacement facility found or constructed for them. I know that 2 years ago, it was researched and discussed if Coach Hajik Rostomian and his Central Park Tennis Academy could go over to Glendale High School, but their tennis team's priority, practice, and tournament schedule, as well as insurance limitations, made that impossible. Since that last City Council meeting that we attended 2 years ago, Coach Gago, as he is known to his students and friends, has produced a tennis tournament that was a great success with Armenian local TV, as well as producing a USTA junior champion, Alex Halebian, who is now competing around the world. The city's bulldozing of these tennis courts without a replacement facility will not only take away one of the few revenue-generating facilities in Glendale, but more importantly, it will end Coach Gago's after-school tennis program for hundreds of his students and children. I am forwarding to you copies of the previous petitions, Glendale News Press newspaper articles, and photos of the last tournament given, as well as a letter from the Armenian Consul General thanking Coach Gago and me for the last tournament. Also, for your information, USTA of Southern California Executive Director Henry Talbert expressed a desire to give or match funds with the city so that an alternative tennis court site could be constructed. This elimination of public tennis courts will result in tennis becoming a sport of the only very wealthy, as it is in many countries. Forwarding.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rolinda Biesmeyer, followed by Marlene Schmidt.
Mr. Mayor, council members, my name's Rolinda Biesmeyer. I'm a 30-year resident of Glendale, and this is my second time speaking to the council in regards to the closing and trying to save our Central Park tennis courts. I feel, at Colorado and Louise, I feel this council is doing a grave misservice to the people of Glendale if you close the courts at this location for 4 good reasons. One, it's the largest children's training area in the city, and it's economical for a lifetime sport. Tennis. As long as you can walk, you can play. It has easy bus transportation along, Colorado, and so the kids can get there without depending on their parents to bring them. And it's within walking distance of the new apartment complexes at the Americana, and I'm sure Mr. Caruso would be very happy to know that people can go there. Glendale needs this facility. And I also wanted to say the grassy areas next to the tennis courts are rarely used, and they have an expense of close to $60,000 that the city is paying for, so to keep it green, and so it's wasteful, but the courts are not. And last but not least, it always takes the city council or the city longer than it thinks to find alternative sites, for most of its projects. And since this isn't a major project, it's going to take forever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Biesmeyer. Marlene Schmidt, followed by Jim Kussman.
Honorable Mayor and council members, my name is Marlene Schmidt, and I'm a former resident of Glendale. I graduated from Holy Family High School here in Glendale, and I've been a member of the Ladies Glendale Central Park Tennis Club for 30 years. Our club originated at Central Park. We still have a group of seniors that have been playing every Saturday morning there for 30 years, along with various other club challenge matches there. I don't have the paperwork in hand, but I read back sometime in 2003 or 2004 that the Glendale City Council voted on a project to rebuild the senior center that included retaining all 4 of the courts, and I did see it in writing when I went to the building across the way. I don't have it in hand, but you could probably reference it if you go back into the reports. But I would hope that the present council would continue to honor that and realize the importance of these courts for the youth programs that help keep the kids off the streets or out of the internet dens and build character. Also for the seniors like myself who prefer tennis to coffee bingo sit-ins and that sort of thing. Now, the Central Park tennis courts are now the only 4 courts left to serve the southern Glendale area, with the closing of the 2 courts on Pacific, just a few blocks south of Colorado. That was a few years ago or a year and a half ago. Your Parks and Recreation Director has in the past suggested Glendale High School, Fremont Park, Glorietta, and Shoal as alternatives. However, they cannot offer the teaching courts and the secured public court reservations that Central Park can because of their high usage during prime time being certain hours, weekends. Noon is usually out and that type of thing, and the high later evenings and that type of thing. Now, as a senior, I can appreciate the needs of other seniors who deserve an improved senior citizen center, but the rest of the needs of the tennis community should not be eliminated in the process, and waiting for other courts to be built or coming up with some courts hasn't been viable. So please retain our 4 Central Park tennis courts in your Central Park improvement plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Jim Kussman, followed by Patrick Massahy.
Jim Kussman, resident of Glendale. Before I get started on my little deal, I just heard 4 words from the dais that almost made me faint, and that's overdevelopment and downzoning. Why don't we apply that to the whole city? I mean, if it's good enough for Foothill Boulevard, I mean, what is more uncohesive than a 4 or 5, 6 unit apartment building going up in a single family dwelling neighborhood just because it's zoned to do it? Might give it some thought. I was here last week and launched into some diatribe about water usage. And I was on my way home, and it dawned on me that I actually came here to ask a question that I didn't get asked. I didn't ask it. I'd just like to know whom I can make an appointment with to sit down and spend some time so they can explain to me how I'm supposed to save water and the city continues to add units that demand more water. I think I made my point last week. I don't get it. And I just could somebody tell me who to call, make an appointment, go in and sit down, and have this explained in detail?
Yes, I'd like to suggest Councilmember Najarian. I'm just kidding. No.
You know what? Just tell me where and when, and I'll be there.
Who from our staff would be the appropriate person if he would like to have some face time?
Check with Mr. Starbird, but maybe his office or GWP would probably be the likely.
Let's do that. Let's see if we can't schedule that.
And I don't want some sunshine. I'd like some actual...
Let's see if we can get you an answer.
Okay.
It wouldn't be GWP. If anybody, it's my office. The gentleman's asking more of a rhetorical question that has to do, frankly, with 600,000 people a year who move into the state of California, and state policies that say you have to address that development need. And it does seem to be in conflict with water policy throughout the state, but we don't have the latitude of saying no more development in town. I mean, that's the simple answer, and there's not a lot of detail to it. Some of the statewide policies are rather inconsistent, and our need for water right now, especially at this time, is inconsistent with the fact that 600,000 people more come to California, and there's a need for housing and development, and we are obligated on a reasonable basis to meet that need. Rena, that is the simple answer. It's not all that complicated, but it is very counterintuitive because sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense. But that is the condition the state is in currently. But I'd be happy to discuss it further, but that, frankly, is the sum and substance of it.
All right.
So the answer is make an appointment with you?
You're welcome to.
Okay. I mean, I guess my point is, they can, as many. I guess is the answer. They just keep coming until there is no more. I mean, is that? I mean, it is counterintuitive, is it not?
Yeah.
Anyway. Let me just stop for a moment, please. Mr. Kussman, if you wish to make an appointment, you can do that.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. All right.
Already giving him the number.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Mr. Kussman. Patrick Massahy, followed by Margaret Hammond.
Patrick Massahy, Glendale resident. I want to thank Mr. Kussman for making these presentations, actually, because what we have here are some contradictions. According to the latest AP report that I read, people are leaving California. Okay, the California population is going down because of the horrendous housing crisis. In fact, we've lost population the past 3 years. More people have left than have come in. So, and also one more thing, the state of California does not mandate that you build units. The state of California makes recommendations for every city, and not a single California city has been penalized for not building these apartment complexes. So let's not mislead the public by saying you are mandated and you are forced. That is not the case. On the other issue, ladies and gentlemen, something really ugly happened in these chambers 2 weeks ago. We had a desperate realtor who's hired as a PR representative of DS Honda, who claimed that there were people that supported the project at Grandview and all that stuff. Well, on Saturday morning when I was leaving to get my newspaper from a local 7-Eleven, there was a little envelope in front of my door. And with that envelope came some damaging information about who some of these speakers were that appeared in front of you and said they were supporting this project. Well, I'm going to share with you what I was given by this anonymous person who called himself or herself a concerned HOA member. And I'm going to pass this around. There are 7 of these, 1 for the city manager and 1 for the city attorney and 5 for the rest of you. What you will see here are basically, in fact, I'm going to read the whole thing. What you see here is basically somebody that misrepresented themselves. They never disclosed the fact that they were the sister of Miss Ani Vardapetian. the so-called PR representative of DS Honda. And on Monday, my worst nightmare came true when I picked up an actual form from the city indicating the street name of where this person called Ms. Kadian was living in Glendale. Based on these documents that you have in front of you, there's a clear relationship between Ani Vardapetian and Tina Kadian, or should I say Christina Vardapetian. One thing I don't like is these PR people who are so desperate to have these apartment complexes built so they can sell them and make money off of them, come in here with their family members and try to say they support this project. That is totally unfair, it's unethical, and it's a scam. That individual, who actually was given the first opportunity to talk because our Nigerian is nice enough to consider, kids being in the audience, and she had 2 kids with her, that individual was given the first opportunity to talk. And based on these documents, you will see a clear relationship. In fact, the apartment complex that she lives in was sold to her by Ani Vardapetian. Same last name as hers. Interesting. And she lives, miles and miles away from our neighborhood, and she had the tenacity to come down here and say she supports this project? What is going on here? What is going on? And again, this is part of a desperate move by a developer who's hired this individual called Ani Vardapetian, who's going around trying to pick up these bogus signatures that people are supporting this project. The neighborhood is adamantly against this project. In fact, she is picking on the new buyers who are predominantly Armenian American in the neighborhood, because those are the only ones that will listen to her, because she comes in with this comment: this project will actually increase your property price because we're beautifying the neighborhood. So guess what? Bunch of these newcomers who don't know about appraisal values and do not know about real estate law are saying, oh great, we're getting an apartment complex that's going to increase our property prices. She's telling us that, and she's a realtor. Well, guess what? According to every appraisal book out there, these huge complexes actually damage the property price of a single-family residential unit. Nobody wants to buy near a huge complex such as the one that they're proposing. Nobody. And according to all these real estate experts, you talk to any honest realtor, they'll tell you, no, your property price will take a huge dive if you actually do this. So the documents are in front of you. I had these documents checked by an attorney because I wasn't sure if this was public information, and they assured us that you can actually purchase these from the internet. And these are public documents from public records. And there's a clear link between this so-called Tina Kadian, or should I say Christina Vardapetian, and Ani Vardapetian. So my message to DS Honda and Ani Vardapetian is, do not bring your family members to support something that the neighborhood doesn't want. Thank you.
Mr. Masahi, on an unrelated note, I understand you are a new father a second time over recently.
Yes.
That's a congratulations to you. Okay. All right. Margaret Hammond, followed by Ellen Asatrian.
My name is Margaret Hammond. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, staff, and members of the audience, and some of my friends. Some may not be. I have to say, I have to support Patrick. I am a witness to what large apartment buildings can do to the value of an area. How long was South Glendale downgraded and whatever for years? Mr. Yusefian even was responsible for a series of articles in the paper, and I still have them, about what happened to Glendale in the South End due to all the overbuilding of apartments. That's right. But I'm telling you, and I kept those. So therefore, I am supporting what he has to say. This is wrong for people to come in from outside the area and tell the neighbors of the people what they need in their neighborhood. I don't think so. Anyway, on to, Labor Day is honoring, it's not just a holiday, it's honoring the working people. And my husband happened to be a printer. And, the Printers Guild was the first union in the world. They were the German Guild. And the boys were actually, in a sense, sold to the journeyman printers to be, their families felt it was an honor for them to go into that line of business because it was an assured job. And they were the first unions, in a sense. So, and my husband was very proud of being a printer. He worked for the Glendale News Press for the deals for many years. He set them up in 50 years ago in the first offset printing business. They were already in letterpress, but then they went into the offset. All I'm saying is that we honor our working people at this time. And I know my mother came over on a boat from the old country in the 20s, and she worked her passage, had to pay for her passage by working as a servant for a year in Canada, and was hardworking. And one of her proudest moments was when she became a Canadian, finally. You didn't just become a Canadian because even though you're from the British Isles, you had to apply to become a citizen, even though she was married to a Canadian citizen. My father was 6 generations, I 7 Canadian. And she was very proud of becoming a Canadian, as I was of becoming an American. And I am not a Canadian American, I am an American American. And I say that over and over. We don't need to have hyphenated Americans. Let's be Americans, and we'll save ourselves a lot of trouble, heartache. Then one of the things is about developer fees. I watched last week the redevelopment on TV. I couldn't, because of whatever, be there. And I saw a developer who wants to put in a building down at 15 or 1835 South Brand, carrying on about that he can't afford the developer's fees. Those fees were voted on. They were passed. Why is that man, even if he cannot, I remember Mr. Starbird's very words, and they were that if you can't afford to build in Glendale, then go elsewhere and build. If you don't want to pay the fees, yes, well, not very words, but more or less, that if you can't afford to build in Glendale, then that's it, don't build. I watched it very carefully. I was quite surprised at that. And all the other cities surrounding us charge developers fees and have done for years. Why should the people of Glendale have to pick up the fees for services for new residents that the developers are making money? I don't care what they say. Why are they building if they're not going to make money? Don't build then. But why should we, the rest of the citizens, have to pick up the costs for new citizens for the services that these developer fees will help to pay for? And then my final thing is on Monday, September the 8th, the Glendale Homeowners Coordinating Council are going to be having Mr. Jim Starbird as our speaker, and it will be on the matter of the budget. And there will be question and answer, and everyone is welcome. You don't have to be a member of a homeowners association. Anybody can come to those meetings, and you'll have a chance to see and hear what goes on, and to talk to our star speaker, Mr. Starbird. And it'll be at 7 o'clock, and it's free parking, free refreshments, provided by the Far Northwest homeowners, I believe, this turnaround. So we will be looking forward to seeing a lot of people there. September the 8th at the Congregational Church, up on Kenyatta, 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock. So we're looking forward to seeing you all there. And thank you very much again for listening to me, and hope you all have a safe Labor Day weekend. It's kind of a weekend everybody takes off and drives and does, so be careful on the roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Elena Satrian? Elena Satrian, followed by Rita Unikian.
Mayor Draymond, council members, city staff, fellow Glendalians, my name is Elena Satrian. I'm the executive director for the Armenian National Committee Glendale chapter. I'm here today to clarify misinformation which has spread in reference to the issues surrounding Councilmember Weaver's inappropriate and unacceptable comments to the Pasadena Weekly. The ANC Glendale chapter became aware of the article published in the Pasadena Weekly on July 28th, a day prior to the council meeting during which the issue was brought to the council's attention. Without jumping to conclusions and making assumptions based on what we read in the newspaper, the ANC instead investigated the facts surrounding the situation prior to making any statements. To their credit, upon our request for a meeting, Pasadena Weekly editor Kevin Urich and reporter Karl Kozlowski were open to our inquiry and willing to discuss our concerns about not only Councilmember Weaver's comments, but also reporting in the article. The Pasadena Weekly has shown the ability to take a critical look at its own words on this issue and courageously come forward on the problems with the piece. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for our elected officials, especially Councilmember Weaver. We asked Mr. Weaver to condemn this sort of stereotyping against any minority or group because it is unacceptable in Glendale and contrary to our shared American values. But he not only refused, but also failed to take responsibility for his words. This issue has nothing to do with the proposed smoking ordinance. As you already know, at the July 29th meeting, I presented the results of the ANC Glendale survey on smoking within the community. While the ANC does not have a position on this matter, in the interest of providing the council data, the ANC took this initiative to help with the public discourse on the matter, but not to advocate for any particular position. The ANC would never oppose any public health measure that are researched, thoughtful, and benefit our city. Public health is not our area of expertise, so we defer to our city's public health experts and always stand ready to help within our abilities. Through his comments in the newspaper and later during the August 12th City Council meeting, Councilmember Weaver claimed that the ANC and the Armenian American community have made the smoking ban issue political. In reality, it is Councilmember Weaver's words and behavior that has villainized a specific segment of the community in order to gain political support for his constituents who who share his out-of-touch views. While this may have been acceptable long ago in American history, Mr. Weaver's behavior is a crude violation of today's American values that we all share and is no longer acceptable. This behavior is also unacceptable for an elected leader. A true leader would seek to unite citizens behind issues of common concern, such as the smoking ordinance, not divide us all from each other. The situation is also a poor reflection on this body, and when this body does not officially condemn this sort of words and behavior, then it is in essence tolerating it. This shows a lack of courage and only deepens the problems in our city. We need elected leaders who are willing to look past racial lines and serve all of Glendale. As leaders of our city, it is your duty to work together to build a stronger and more unified community. We hold our council members to a higher standard. Mayor John Draymond and council members, I'm here to ask you to raise the bar on this dais, to no longer sit silently while certain council and community members attack your constituents in an ugly fashion and with racial prejudice, no matter what the targeted group may be. Your words are important, but your actions are even more important. Because at the end of the day, what you do is what sets the tone at the top for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Satrian. Rita Unikian, followed by Mike Mohill.
Hi. My name is Rita Unikian. I have lived in Glendale since 1989. First of all, I am single parent and have volunteered at the Glendale schools for 12 years. The reason of my concern is to ask the city council members to please consider looking in rent control, especially for all low-income residents in Glendale who are struggling to make a living. I have handout that I needed to distribute to Glendale residents to sign and support my cause. I am asking my dear resident in Glendale to stand by me, especially the ones who cannot pay their high rent and senior citizen on SSI or with low income. I want these people to join me. As far as now, none of the council members support us or want to do anything to bring rent control to Glendale. I am very sad about this. I always think that Leaders of this city want to help everyone. I always respect them, and even today I respect them. I think they always want the best for this city, but it is sad that our council is not thinking about the people who have low income and the senior citizen of this community who need help for rent. They don't want to help seniors to not to worry about rent. People who have many money in life can talk better than those who do not have the money. But this does not mean that they cannot work with us to help us. I want from all my friends who watch meeting to help us. We need to live together in one city. I know that when I collect 13,000 signatures, the landlords will want to send our way and hire the best lawyer and fight us. But I am asking them not to think about us before they spend their money. Those who cannot afford the rent, senior citizens, people who are no welfare people, who have come here from other countries to live in peace. They need to know that our own God wants all has children to help each other. If you listen to God, God will take care of this city. To every landlord, I put this to you, so you listen to us and lower rent just a little so we can live here. I hope you think about us. And for the council, I say thank you to everyone who works to help this city. Thank you for your concentration.
Thank you, Ms. Unikian. Mike Mulhill, please.
Evening, gentlemen, Mayor, Councilman. I did not know what I was going to talk about this evening. Actually, I was going to sit in the back of the room and say nothing. But then I heard Councilman Yusefian speak about role models. Who are our role models from early age? Our mother, our father, our grandparents, and uncle. We get older, we have teachers. Maybe an actor, engineer, politician. When he said politician, I thought about the 5 people I see every Tuesday night. And I thought about character. Character, character, and character. Mr. Yusefian was a real proletariat, the way he spoke. My hat off to you, sir. Mr. Najarian spoke like a good lawyer, but he made his point, and I appreciate that too. But the other 2 gentlemen, Draymond and Quintero, were silent. Very silent. I remember the night of the 29th when our 6th councilman, Mr. Barry Allen, spoke before the dais and said, I have this article from the Pasadena Weekly, and it says this about the Armenians and about the smoking and so forth. And Mr. Mayor was in shock. I didn't say anything to the paper. I wouldn't talk to the paper, knowing that you all had seen this article because Mr. Allen had emailed you all the day before, except for Mr. Weaver, because he told me that you don't read his mail. But the thing that I remember most about that night, and I went home and watched the video, is Mr. Weaver said, quote, "This is the best laugh of the night." After he made you look embarrassed, Mr. Draymond, and made everybody else on the council look like fools. Fools, 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 and fools. And you know what? I think the biggest fool, I'll let that be your own judge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That is our last speaker card. I will close oral communications. Let me go to my colleagues for comments or questions or input or what have you. Mr. Yusefian, anything?
Hello, Mr. Najarian.
Mr. Najarian.
Okay, good evening.
I wanted to cheer up Mr. Masihi. He was rather angry. And I wanted to cheer him up on the one point that he was correct on. I guess this was a redevelopment agency meeting 2 weeks ago about the Grandview project, if I'm not mistaken. There was a dispute over the gross acreage of the lot, and he insisted it was 3.65. Our staff said it was 4.1. It was. No, it isn't. It is. No, it isn't. And you were right, Mr. Masihi. If I've read the latest memo, there was a mistake in our calculation. So I will give credit where credit is due. Just leave it at that. I was hoping to cheer him up with that.
It's 3.6?
It's 3.6. It's the lesser amount. So.
Okay. Mr. Weaver, comments?
The only thing to add on, it was the dedicated street portion, been dedicated street years ago, had been added in, and it shouldn't have been added in. So when that was subtracted out because it was city-owned street, you're back to the 3.56 or 65.
Mr. Quintero? Mr. Yusefian?
Have a safe weekend, and try not to drive too much and save gas. It costs too much money. Spend some time with your family. And I hope the rest of my colleagues have a good weekend and good Labor Day. I will be laboring, by the way. So I got a lot of honeydews, so I'll be laboring. So I'm not going anywhere.
Okay. All right.
With that, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second. We're adjourned. Thank you.